Joey Cantillo watched Slade Cecconi's performance yesterday and was like, here, hold my root beer. I can outdo you. What a game, what a performance, one of the best pitching performances of the year. We'll get into it on today's Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to a solo edition of Locked On Guardians. Justin was at the Lake County Captains playoff game tonight. I'll have some special insights later in the week, but so instead tonight you have me, Jeff Ellis, your host. What a game, what a performance. We will get into all of it. But first, I want to thank you for watching our show today, joining us after another Guardians win. And we cover your Cleveland Guardians from the majors to the minors, the draft, and everything in between. And we do it every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I am Jeff Ellis, the first host of Locked On Guardians, 1,500 plus episodes later. Before that, I was a national writer at Scout and 24/7 focused on prospects and the draft. I want to thank you for making today's show your first listen today and every day, wherever it is that you get podcasts. And I want to give a big shout out to all of our everydayers. I was looking at the comments. John Fagan still leads the way. Most YouTube comments on the show. So if you're chasing him down, he is the one to get. I want to take a moment before I get into the rundown of what today's show is. Well, actually, let's do the rundown first. Let's do it that way. On today's show, we, of course, have to talk about Joey Cantillo's performance and just what we've seen with him in particular since he came back over the last 4 games. We're going to talk about the postseason for the minor leagues. 2 games tonight. There were some interesting performances, some players we have to talk about based on how they played. And in addition to that, we also want to talk, I did some deep diving at the catcher position. It has been a hot button issue this year. I'm going to argue it's actually not the worst position on the Guardians, that they have some positions that are worse, but there are some big issues with the position as well. Before we get any further, though, I have to take a moment and say today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Joey Cantillo had a chance to make history a day after Slade Cecconi had a chance to make history. So let's start with that. If you were following me on Twitter, I was like, Cantillo's got a chance at a MADDUX. For those who are not familiar, it was a Cleveland blogger, Jason Lukart, who came up with this idea. And it's a complete game where you throw less than 100 pitches. And there's actually less MADDUXs in the history of the MLB than there are no hitters. So you have to be really efficient. You have to have some luck. You have to have a lot of things going right. The last MADDUX thrown by a Cleveland pitcher was Corey Kluber in 2014. So it's been 11 years. It's not 44, but it's been 11. There's only 3 this year. And I'm laughing because one was Tarek Skubal versus the Guardians. One was was it Skubal? One was Sonny. Yeah, it was Skubal versus the Guardians. Sonny Gray versus the Guardians. And then Nathan Eovaldi. I can't remember who was that he was facing. So this would have only been the 4th one to occur this year. It is a rare occurrence, but just amazing. As good as Slade Cecconi was yesterday, I would sit back and argue that Cantillo was better. And one of the big reasons was he didn't walk anyone. We got so used to control issue Cantillo. He got sent down specifically to kind of work on that, slow it down, maybe not try to be so perfect. A 0 walk game. That's great. Now, I know this Kansas City team is not the highest walk team, but he also did it with, I know Bobby Witt was not in the game yesterday. I feel like Garcia wasn't either. Those two are one of the best 1-2 combinations in all of baseball. If you're not paying attention, Miguel Garcia has had a heck of a year. Those two are deadly. And Cantillo, and they're right-handed, so Cantillo's at the disadvantage. Against him, they're combined 0 for 6 today with 1 strikeout. It was a beauty in the 6th inning where Cantillo just perfectly hit the corner. Got Bobby Witt to strike out looking. That's not something you see happen much. But Cantillo he was heavy on the change in this one. The Royals' expected batting average was barely over 200. It's every reason why, when I discussed this earlier in the week, and go back to Monday's show, or if you hear me on the radio talking with Dennis Maniloff, I still have Cantillo as the higher rated overall pitcher in terms of ceiling than Parker Messick. Messick has been fantastic, but Cantillo that changeup is such a separator. And, his secondary pitches are all pretty solid. The fastball and just the ability to command his pitches have been the concern. But the high, when we say high ceiling potential, everyone wants to jump ace. I mean, even if this guy's a really good 2, a 3, that's a huge win for the organization. Because if you've forgotten, this is yet another piece from the Mike Clevenger deal. And you can see what he's done. In his last 4 starts, by the way, he's gone 24 2/3 innings with a 1.09 ERA. 2 of those before he got sent down, 2 of those after. If you also worry about level of competition, remember last time was 6 innings, 1 earned run against Boston. Then he had 5 innings against Atlanta, and then the other one was 5 2/3 against the White Sox. So it was one weaker one in there. Atlanta has a good lineup in spite of their struggles this year. So when you're looking at the whole theme of this, I know we got to get into the rest of the game. I mean, Jose nearly had a cycle, but it gets overshadowed because Joey Cantillo, again, here's my question to you guys out there, all of our everydayers, all of our fans, comment below. This is where I'm not good. This is where I can't remember things well, but like, can you remember 2 games like this back to back, 2 games in a row against a team fighting for their playoff lives, which is what Kansas City is doing right now, that they had 2, borderline historic outcomes? That's huge. And especially for a team that is in a fight for their lives, that's in a fight for their playoff, hope of the playoffs here. What performances by both of these young arms. I mean, can you ask for anything more from what they did? It'd be great if, you had a Maddox and a no-hitter in 2 days in a row. That I've definitely, I don't even recall ever hearing that happening. Fever Dog or someone like that, please let me know if that has happened out there. But just those big performances on nights where you need this pitching staff to step up. They got 10 runs yesterday. They only got 2 today. They could have had more. John Kenzie Noel hitting 5th was an issue. It was definitely a point where I think all of us were like, oh, I wish Manzardo was playing first base. They were pretty ugly at bats for him. But let's not focus on the negative. Let's skip to the positive. Jose Ramírez was a triple away from the cycle. Started off with the home run early in the game. And then him and Fry combined to score multiple runs. Now, Fry, yes, got picked off second base, but probably doesn't matter with Noel and Jones hitting behind him. Both struggled today. I mean, let's be honest, outside of Fry and Ramírez, it was a team struggle today. Cleveland reached base 8 times in this game, 5 of them thanks to Ramírez and Fry. Those 2 players drove the offense, and they did enough. 2 runs was enough in the end. Kansas City is kept off the board. No walks for Kansas City, just 5 hits, 2 of those coming in the 9th. At one point, Cantillo had set down, over 10 in a row straight. I just keep going back to him because it's one of the best pitching performances of the year. I really do believe that. To me, again, the no-hitter was fantastic for Slade Cecconi. It's great when it's a no-hitter, but the way Cantillo dominated, the way he mixed that change, hit the corners, showed the command that has been the bugaboo for his entire career, was amazing. And Noah Cameron is a great pitcher. He has been fantastic all year for Kansas City. He went 7 innings, and they needed that after, getting I'm blanking on who they faced yesterday. But, they got into the pen early yesterday. It was Burkhardt, the kid from Ohio. So the pen was already hit hard. We already know now that Michael Oakie isn't pitching tomorrow. He has a non-baseball concussion. He just came off the paternity list. I'm like, he must have had the world's weirdest baby delivery. Going on the paternity list, comes back, concussion. I don't know what happened there. I'm joking, obviously. I know it's a bad joke. But no Oakie tomorrow. They have Kyle Wright, who's on their injured list in the minors, is their only pitcher in the minors on their 40-man. So the Royals are in a situation where they don't have someone to necessarily go to. Maybe they do, but that player has to be added to their 40-man. Probably a bullpen game tomorrow. And, they needed Noah Cameron to go out and do what he did. But then, again, what a great job Hedges with the 10-pitch at bat. Kwan walking. Martinez getting a hit, as well. And then, yes, Jose hits in the double play. But it forced him to go and get John Schreiber to make this a multiple pitcher appearance. And with them already being down, that's huge just overall for this series. It was a great game. I know, again, people complain offense was terrible. Offense did enough. Cantillo was fantastic. They worked it at the right points. So you had 3 pitchers under this game. And the big and here, winning this gives Cleveland the series. Doesn't matter what happens these next 2 games. Obviously, you want to win them. And, they should win the bullpen game. Their bullpen should be beat up. Again, maybe I'll be wrong. I don't know the Kansas City minors as well as I know Cleveland's, obviously. But it sets them up where they now have the first tiebreaker against the Royals. So when the Royals face the Mariners, we can just root Royals all the way because of the situation. For those who want the 3 stars of the game and the box score bingo, which I used to do when I had this as a solo show, of course, Cantillo, Ramírez, and Fry. Cleveland had 8 base runners. That's about 2.6 runs on average. 5 for Kansas City, 1.6 runs. Cleveland should have won this game, and they did. And it's another big win. Hopefully the Milwaukee Brewers, as I'm recording, can get it together and beat the Texas Rangers. But either way, Cleveland is doing what they need to do. Fantastic performance again. Joey Cantillo, what a night. We'll be back to talk about the catcher position what's going right, what's going wrong on today's Locked On Guardians. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your bet wins, okay, I've been doing FanDuel reads for years here. I don't think I've ever seen a value this high. This is the highest amount you've ever gotten from FanDuel. If you've ever been on the fence, now is the time. Because if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Like $250, maybe $275. I don't think we've ever had $300. This is a new high, and is why you should check out FanDuel right now in particular, because you've never had a chance to get more. There's so many fun prop bets. You can do same game parlays and even jump into the action live as it unfolds. So you're ready to play? Why wouldn't you be? Again, $300, the biggest amount they have ever given. Very simple $5 bet and win. Download the FanDuel app now by using FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And if your team wins, you'll get $300. FanDuel.com. You've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products, and that's sure. Like that one actually works. There are so many products out there, it's hard to know which ones are actually going to do anything. That's why you should give Nutrafol a closer look. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 500,000 people. And it's not just hype. This is a supplement clinically tested that targets the root causes of thinning and shedding with a proactive approach. Again, you want to trust things that are based on science and doctors. The #1 dermatologist recommended growth supplemental brand, that speaks volumes to me, and it should speak volumes to you. I am someone, I gotta admit, I wear a hat because my hair is thinning. It is one of those parts of life. When you're looking at a product, you want to look for the product that has the science, like Nutrafol, with the scientists, those dermatologists backing it up. See thicker, stronger hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering Locked On MLB listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code Locked On MLB. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code Locked On MLB. Want to thank you all for joining us, coming back, sticking with us on the show today. But of course, you should be sticking with us. What a fun game. Again, I'm just going to sit back and say, what a performance. What a game. Joey Cantillo. Whew. That Bobby Witt, 2 outs in the 6th inning. Gets him to chase out of the zone, gets him on the corner. And that corner pitch brings us perfectly into Bo Naylor. So I was doing some deep diving on Bo Naylor. Let's be real honest. Bo Naylor is one of the more disappointing recent prospects for the Cleveland Guardians. He's had a lot of games at the big league level, and we're yet to see a lot from him. His best run was during his rookie season, if we're being real honest here. The second half of his rookie year, he looked like a keeper. He looked like a potential player who could be special after a really rough start. Now, we're all tired of the Mike Zunino experience, and he's still better than Mike Zunino. But of the 29 catchers who have had at least 300 plate appearances, he is 27th. So, yeah. So offensively, there's not much going on in terms of the performance. 9 more plate appearances, he'll pass 1,000. And, it's hard to believe. Again, small sample size on only 230 plate appearances. He had such a good second half as a rook that he had a 122 WRC plus. And you're probably like, well, Jeff, you always talk about BABIP. What was his BABIP? It was 267 that year. That's why we kind of liked him. We're like, okay, like he had 11 home runs in 67 games in 230 plate appearances. He just hasn't shown that power even remotely since then. He hasn't shown that batting average either, unfortunately, at a 237. His defense has kind of improved, but let's dive into that. So why is that bottom corner so important for Bo Naylor? So we know that Bo Naylor struggles offensively. Like, let's just full stop. I know you're all shocked. I'll give you a second here. Okay, we'll get back into it. A year ago, we talked about what a great pitch framer he was and how he was more of a defensive first guy. He still has good defensive metrics overall, but his framing, I don't know if it's this year he's throwing out runners at a much better rate. And I wonder if he's like gearing up to throw and that's affecting his framing, or if his positioning to throw has changed how he framed. Because in the shadow of the strike zone, that's kind of the area, around the strike zone where you can steal a pitch, you can steal a strike. He was awesome a year ago. 11 catcher runs that he added framing wise. This year he's at a -4. And what really stands out is over his whole career, his worst area is the bottom of the zone, bottom middle of the zone. And it really made me think, and he's not great on the bottom corners. And then I always get thrown on. So then what they call zone 16, which, from the hitter's perspective, left side of the box, is the other place he's not good. And then he's good on the right side of the box. That's probably his strongest zone. So he can't reach one, but he can reach the other. Why this is all important is it makes me think, we've talked about Tanner Bybee this year. Why is Tanner Bybee striking out less guys? Why is he not, getting as many whiffs? Maybe not getting the chase rate this wouldn't affect so much. But Bo Naylor's shadow strike percentage is nearly 8% lower. Sorry, we're approaching, it's 8% lower than a year ago. So he has 8% less strikes in the zone. That's not an insignificant number. You think about all the times he catches 8% less strikes than a year ago. That's a lot. That's a big change. And you think about, Tanner added that sinker. Now, a lot of times he doesn't miss close, but it also means like there's a lot of times this year where he's missing maybe close low in the zone or close out of the zone that a year ago would have been strikes. Bo would have stole them. So do you penalize Bo because he was so good a year ago and this year he's kind of a little bit average to below? Like he went from the best to When you're not adding anything with the bat, I think you do. I think, when his value is mostly defensive at this point, you need him to be better in those zones. And to have nearly 8% less strikes, that he's stealing 8% less pitches, essentially, is a pretty big deal. So it's not just that Bo Naylor this year is not hitting, that he's, arguably one of the worst catchers, in baseball in terms of everyday players. It's also this. It's that he's, when you go across zone 14 is his best. He's solid at the top of the zone and the top, the top corners, but he's really struggles bottom and outside. Again, outside if you're a righty, inside if you were a lefty. He struggles to get those points, and the loss of those strikes could be affecting a few pitchers. That could be one of the things with Tanner. Could make some of our pitchers even better if it was working successfully. So what does this team do? I know Cooper Engel has been great. And I have been, I was out in front of Cooper Engel. I had him in the top 10 before I think Keith Law's list came out. And I was like, wow, I've got him 10th. And Keith Law had him 4th. I'm like, okay, I'm not the high man anymore. Cooper is really hit. Defensively, we're still kind of waiting to see how those pieces come together. But we don't know how it's going to translate. That's always the question. How is it going to translate? As we've seen, you look at CJ Kafis, like his struggles. Look at Noel. Look at so many guys. I want to believe in Cooper Engel, but the problem is there's not a ton behind him. So if Engel isn't the answer, you're kind of, I like Bennett Thompson a lot and what he has done, but like he's not a top 30 prospect. You don't have a catcher outside of Cooper Engel who has a chance of being the future of this team at that position. So what can they do? Well, I was going through just WRC Plus, looking at guys who have been offensive this year, and most of them are starters. These are guys teams aren't going to trade, but two names kind of intrigued me. The first name is Liam Hicks. I brought it multiple times. Liam Hicks is Stephen Kwan is a catcher. Terrible arm. He frames about as well as Naylor has this year. He blocks better than Naylor, I want to say. He's got a 100 WRC plus. That's come down a lot. That's the other thing with catchers. Like Luis Torriens at the All-Star break looked like an All-Star. He's fallen apart. Agustin Ramirez, he's got an 89 now. He's fallen down. You might have remembered his hot start. But Hicks is at a 101. That has come down from 130 earlier in this year. Doesn't strike out, walks, controls the strike zone, doesn't chase, no power at all. So gets on base, 350 on base percentage this year, might be more of a 320 when you're looking and comparing that to what Bo Naylor does at about 271. Guy gets on base 60% of the time more. That intrigues me. And the other guy, is a guy we've talked about many times before. And we're going to talk about him when we come back from the break. I'm going to go a little crazy, a little off the board maybe for a catching option. And then we got to talk about these two postseason games that the Cleveland Guardians minor leagues competed in tonight. And I got a little intel from Justin in one of these games. So you're going to want to tune in to hear what he said about what player looked the best to him on today's Locked On Guardians. I get to talk about game time. I never get to talk about game time. Why do I never get to talk about game time? Because Justin loves game time. So he always, that's my ad. That's how good of a service is. It's not just that he loves the app. He wants to read the ad every time because it's product he believes in. And there's nothing like catching a baseball game live. Just ask Justin. That's why he's not here. The energy, the crowd, the chance to see your team in person, but actually getting tickets, that's the tough part. Queues, login screens, surprise fees. That's what I hate the most. It takes all the fun out of it. So I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by Game Time, the Game Time guarantee. You always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So you pay. So the price you see is the price you pay. That's why I love the all in. You click all in, you're not getting any hidden fees. I hate hidden fees. It's like, oh, I found a good deal, and then all of a sudden the price doubles other places. Not with Game Time. That's not how they work. They want your business again, so they're just honest and upfront, and they offer great deals and great prices. It is a service that both Justin and I not only endorse, but use. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download Game Time today. Thank you for joining us. Again, solo show. I know Justin has a lot of fans. I can tell based on some of the recent comments. I apologize to those of you who only come for Justin. He sent, we were texting the whole day about the game. I sent him those notes about Naylor. We were talking back and forth throughout as Cantillo was dominating today. And I'm just going to say this. He texted, well, I'll save this. Okay. I'm going to save this. Let's finish our catcher discussion. Come back to it. So Liam Hicks, just two final notes. He's got a weird swing. He really gears up for it if you missed it, but his launch angle sweet spot, he just about always hits it. His squared up percentage, just about one of the best in baseball. Chase percentage, 99th percentile. Dude never chases. Doesn't whiff, doesn't K, and he walks. Exit velocity, average exit velocity, the worst in baseball. Like he's that guy that's borderline. Like how is he successful? He's a 5'9" catcher. He's a small guy. I don't know if the Marlins would want to trade him. They have José Ramírez, but they also have Joe Mack playing really well in AAA, who was pretty, I want to say like a second round pick as a high school kid, has some good defensive traits. So I think there's definitely a world where they would consider shopping Hicks because they do have some other catchers who are near and ready and have a guy who at one point in time, some people thought was a rookie of the year candidate. Hicks, by the way, was the Rockies passed in the draft. So after Shane Smith, who made the All-Star game, Liam Hicks was the number 2 player taken in the last Rule 5 draft from the Tigers after they got him from Texas at the deadline last year. So that's Hicks. And then the other player we got to talk about is Sean Murphy. So we're going to be like, give it a rest with Sean Murphy. I know he's got off-season hip surgery, right? And he's going to turn 31 in October. He signed for $15 million a year for his age 31, 32, and 33 years, coming off hip surgery. I know he didn't hit 200 this year, but guess what? He still got a higher batting average than Bo Naylor. What I do know is that his blocks above average is 94th percentile. His caught stealing is 89th. His framing is 82nd. He is elite across the board defensively. So you're not getting a downgrade. He barrels the ball. He doesn't chase, and he walks. And in a year where he is hurt and had some struggles, he still has a 96 WRC plus. And that's part of the reason I wonder if he could be available. The Drake Baldwin is, might win the Rookie of the Year in the National League. He has been fantastic. What a find for the Braves. He's 5th in WRC plus among catchers. His defensive value is positive. Like it's all good for Drake Baldwin. And then you come down and, like I said, Sean Murphy is a little bit ahead of Adley Rutschman. I know people ask about him. I just don't think Baltimore's shipping him out right now because they don't want to sell young on a guy sell low on a guy that young. Murphy is going to have hip surgery. Atlanta has a really struggling bullpen right now. Could use some pitching depth. You just wonder if there's a world where, a Logan Allen and Bo Naylor could get you a Murphy or, maybe even less than that, maybe slightly more. I don't know. I'm so bad at making deals, but he's a buy low candidate due to his age and injury, even though that, the last 3 years, his first year in Atlanta, he was utterly amazing. He had a 130, fell to a 78 last year dealing with injuries, 96 this year dealing with injuries, 94 games, 72 the year before. There's some health risk, but might be worth the gamble just in terms of, hey, he's going to be more productive. He's been, for his career, he's a 111 WRC plus, 10% above league average. This team has not, it's been like 30% below league average as a catcher, and he's doing that while being, one of the top 3 defenders in baseball at the position. Atlanta does really value having two catchers, and maybe they would fix Bo Naylor. Maybe there's some value in that for them. I also don't know. Murphy's a righty. I'm not sure what. And it resorted for me. Drake Baldwin is in terms of his handedness. I just accidentally reshuffled it, so went to the worst. So I got to see Bo there at the top. Drake Baldwin is. Come on, where's that info here on Fangraphs? Either way, he's been a really good player for them. He's a left-handed bat, so it's a little redundant. I'm sure they'd prefer to have another righty to pair with him. But I just wonder, I messaged the Locked On Braves host, and he said potentially they could move him. He thinks they do value having two very good catchers. We know at the deadline they told teams they weren't interested, but with a team that doesn't have a lot of things they can trade, I think there would be it's at least worth talking to them because, man, I just don't know what you can do with Bo Naylor right now. The offense being as bad as it is, the defense has really kind of regressed to average after being outstanding a year ago. It's just a not great situation. And, I've learned something. Like, I was very bullish on him. He was my number one hitting prospect the year before he came up. He had the great rebound. And this is one of those things we do talk about that, you have to be careful about guys who have a lot of value derived from high walk rates because they don't, for some players, they transfer. For other players, they don't. It's not really something that you can sit back and say, oh, without a shadow of a doubt, this guy had a high walk rate, he's going to continue to have one. That's not how walk rates unfortunately work. Some guys do continue them all the way through, and other guys, it kind of falls off. So you want to look at, all of the picture, and it's some of the concerns we had with like CJ Kafis. You want to look at the zone swing rates and see some of that data that we didn't have at the time that I wish we had. But yeah, Naylor is one of my biggest misses, I feel like, of the past few years. Let's talk about these games. So Justin texted me to say, as he put it, my boy Nick Mitchell was the best looking player on the field for the Captains. They lost 7-2 to the Whitecaps. Matt Wilkinson, the tugboat. Rough start. Another rough start for him. It's been a rough year. Sean Matson has had a good year, but he also got lit up. Isaac Martinez gave up a run in 2/3 of an inning. Pitching obviously was not there. Nick Mitchell 3 for 4. Also had a walk, so reached base from 4 out of 5. Plate appearances, no extra base hits for him, but he is looking like a Kwanian-esque player. Now it's the second time I'm using that so far in the show today, but he hit up Ball State. He was a late bloomer. There's a lot of things on him that I really liked. That he's the forgotten guy. People forget because you got Horowitz and Mitchell before you shipped Horowitz for Ortiz, Kennedy, and Hartle. So Mitchell gets forgotten. I think he's a top 30 prospect. I think he's probably going to be a top 25 prospect. He might be my 20th rated prospect before it's all said and done. One of the more underrated players in the system, a guy who just keeps getting better and better as the year has gone on. A really exciting prospect and player in general. A guy that, again, he's not going to, light the world on fire. He's not going to be the biggest prospect because he's not a power guy. He's not a center fielder. He's not a speed guy. All he does is get on base, hit, and perform. I can't wait to see him in Double-A next year. So a very solid performance for Nick Mitchell. Got Jason Churio did have a double and 2 hits in this game. Matt Collado also had 2 hits, but he's not really so much on the radar anymore. Churio is another one of those guys, though, who we talk about, Brito and DeLauder, Bazana, Janau, Churio should be on that list. Like, those were guys who all talked about as top 5 prospects in this system who all spent significant time on the disabled list this year. It was a lot of those top prospects who, did not get the full season to shine. My guy Bennett Thompson and Ryan Cesarini, who we recently talked about on the show, were combined over 10 with 2 Ks. So, not a lot of offense in this one, but nice to see Churio, getting better as the year goes on. But by Justin's counting, Nick Mitchell, best hitter in this one. And then I got to tell a funny story. Justin and I were both talking about how badly we missed on Kevin Bizzell. That we really liked him. The data looked good on him, and he had a rough year this year in low A for a college player. So I had Nick Bizzell turn around and have a home run and a single off Joey Oakie tonight. Oakie was, hitting upper 90s again. He goes 4 innings, 4 hits, 2 of them to Kevin Bizzell, 1 a home run, 2 walks as well, 6 Ks, continuing to look dominant on the mound. Will McCausland, who I've talked about, thinking is a really interesting relief prospect. 2 innings, doesn't give up a run. Logan McGuire was taken 2 years ago, 2 innings, no runs. And then Cam Schulke comes in, gets the save in the postseason. They go to him as the closer. Good performance by Cam Schulke as well. Oakie is, of course, the star. Like, Oakie, with the way he's been playing, the run he's been on, can't help but continue to stay impressed with Joey Oakie and what he is doing and what he has raised his overall profile. It was a rough start the year in Arizona. Now he just keeps going and going and looks, just dynamite. Looks like he's going to challenge Braylon Dowdy for the top pitching prospect in the system. A guy who Joey Oakie's going to, be in the top 10 discussion. Junior Caceres, I talked about him a few weeks ago on a solo show, and then he immediately went ice cold. 3 for 4 in this game. He's rebounding. Just recently turned 18. He is, you love to see a guy that young performing at such a high level. And then, Riley Nelson, who was kind of an underrated guy in the draft class, maybe to agree, maybe not as talked about as everyone else, has 2 hits in this one. He's gotten on base a ton since he was drafted. Guy just to pay attention to. I kind of looked down a little bit on Kafis with a similar profile. Maybe Nelson will prove me wrong, just like Kafis proved me wrong. I want to thank you all for joining us for Rating and Review, downloading daily. It helps. Thank you for doing your part. Big shout out to all of our everydayers. Make sure to check out MLB Game Night. If you're missing Justin, he will have a video appear in that one. Again, thank you all. Really appreciate each and every one of you each and every day who have helped build this show. We're so close to 5,000. Have a friend subscribe so we can get to 5,000 by the end of the year. Thank you, and go Guardians, go.